Welcome to Letters from New Zealand. I am John Jarvis. Gideon Rachman, in his excellent book The Age of the Strongman in 2022, listed 11 strongmen, which is a rather softer word than dictator, tyrant or president for life. Some have been in power for over 20 years. Gone from the list are Boris Johnson, Donald Trump, Rodrigo Duterte and Bolsonaro. Fringe players such as George Soros and former Mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani, and a supporter of Trump, Mr. Brexit, Nigel Farage. They have all been marginalised. With the exception of Xi Jinping and Orban of Hungary, who has played on the fact that in hard times Hungary needs a hard leader. The rest appear shaky at best. Vladimir Putin's shaking has led to speculation about his health and mental abilities. But one can never trust information from belligerents or their allies, especially their diplomats. So what sources of information can we trust? Well, refugees can often be terrorised into truth. Serving or retired generals are careful to protect their integrity, and a few respected news channels. You can check back on their previous articles and reports to ascertain their validity overall. Putin will go only when and where needs to be determined. Why? Because he lost the war with Ukraine. Russian oligarchs feel their lifestyle threatens, or a political coup. When? Within 12 months. Where? 3 suggestions have been made. Venezuela, unlikely, too small and vulnerable. Iran, possibly, but he will end up himself in a country of absolutionism without any powers. Syria is the most likely, where one of the world's richest men could use his wealth and influence to prop up President Bashar al-Assad's dictatorial regime. The fact that there is a Russian naval base there, plus the Wagner Group, could be a positive. Turkey's president lives in a palace of over 1,000 rooms. It is bigger than the Kremlin or Versailles. Of late, Erdogan's popularity has withered in the West. His opposition to Sweden joining NATO, attempts to buy Russian weapon systems, and his apparent friendship with Putin, while Turkey's application to join Europe has lain deep in some cellar, covered in dust, for over 3 decades. He has many similarities with Trump. Both the nationalists have promoted their sons-in-law. They also draw their voting strength from rural areas, and both accuse everyone of plotting against them. Like others listed in the remaining 7 strongmen, Erdogan promotes himself as a defender of his country's faith. But there are ominous signs in the upcoming elections. For the first time, the opposition parties have joined together under one leader. Erdogan has previously lost Istanbul. Will the rest of Turkey follow? Unfortunately, he has won another 5-year term in office. Someone once described Hungarian as one of the most beautiful of languages. Today's comments about Hungary are not so complimentary. All Hungarians were and are happy to be freed from the Austro-Hungarian Empire after World War I. But many, even today, resent losing 2/3 of their territory, and they would very much like it back. Viktor Orban, the country's president, can use this misguided desire to boost his standings while knowing full well that it is never going to happen. With a large majority in Parliament behind him, he has pledged to construct a new state built on illiberalism and national union foundations within the European Union, thus creating tensions within the other states. Orban sounded the alarm about immigration from the Muslim world and promised a Hungary for Hungarians, ignoring the fact that under 6% of Hungarians were born abroad, most of them in Romania, compared to 12% in France and 14% in the UK. In 2011, a new constitution was passed, giving the parliamentary majority the power to appoint judges to the Constitutional Court. This echoes today in Israel, sparking massive and long-running demonstrations. In 2019, a journalist noted anonymously that every single outlet of the media is controlled by the regime. Hungary must be a warning to other Western democracies. Could it happen again? At the time of writing, India has become the world's most populous nation, and Modi is its leader. Unlike the opposition Congress Party, who have governed India since independence from Britain, Modi seeks to preserve India's heritage and rejects embracing Western ideas. He now controls the world's third biggest economy. Modi encourages the cult personality. He is a charismatic speaker and is in his element when addressing large crowds. His image is carefully managed to portray him as a religious and ascetic leader, concerned for the good of the people. His promise is not to make India great again, but to make Hindus, who make up 80% of the population, great again. Modi needs to remain popular because, unlike other dictators, must present himself to the electorate every 5 years. Following his reluctance in speaking out about an 8-year-old Muslim girl who was raped and then murdered in northern India, 49 senior retired civil servants wrote to him in an open letter, accusing him of fomenting in India a climate of fear, hate and viciousness. Modi has been saved somewhat by military confrontation with Pakistan, terrorist attacks and border disputes with China. Modi leaves much of his divisive messaging to his political surrogates, allowing him to be above the political fray. So far, he has managed to hold on. Xi Jinping has once declared the argument that strong countries are bound to seek hegemony does not apply to China. Is it because that China regards itself as a civilization rather than a country? Xi Jinping has manipulated the Chinese Communist Party to empower him, much like the warlords of old. His impassiveness at the last Congress, when a previous president was ushered out, clearly against his wishes, sent a message. The old ways are gone. Xi Jinping seems secure, but is he? The more power he holds alone, the more people can only blame him when something goes wrong. In the early 15th century, China embarked on an expansionist policy. Huge ocean-going junks were constructed, the biggest ships in the world. They sailed throughout the South China Seas and on to the countries of the Middle East, opening up trade routes and posts. Then disaster. Lightning struck the imperial palace, a clear sign that the emperor had lost his mandate with heaven. The emperor abdicated into obscurity, and the admiral of the fleet, a eunuch, was recalled and his fleet dismantled. For 7 centuries, China remained closed. Could Xi Jinping become a bad emperor? China is certainly reaching out across the world, again with new Silk Roads, foreign investments and loans with conditions attached, and from constructing new islands in the South China Seas. The China model is promoted as an alternative to Western-style democracy, more suitable for developing countries. Reuniting Taiwan remains a priority, if a dangerous one, for China. China has now more naval ships than the US, albeit nowhere near as powerful. In 2018, it launched more naval ships than the entire United Kingdom fleet. With an ageing population and a falling growth rate, could Xi Jinping become, like Gorbachev, presiding over the collapse and death of communism?